Hi, it's Lisan. So last week I posted a video about Authority Nutrition that Authority Nutrition shared on his Facebook page, and I got so many comments on it, especially by people who are following a low-carb diet. And I just wanted to share a thread that I was replying to that took up a lot of my time. And this was a thread started by Alexandre C. And this person was basically saying that the studies that I had cited were not sufficient and that there are better studies showing that a low-carb diet is safe and that results in weight loss. She cited 2 studies and she said that they were published after 2010 and so they're reliable. And my reply was that I don't doubt that low-carb diets may have benefits above the standard diet, and sure, there are studies about it. However, how sustainable is low carb for most people? Calorie restriction can backfire big time because of adaptive thermogenesis. A plant-based diet has far better benefits for health than a low-carb paleo diet for most people. And then someone called Jimmy replied and said, low-carb high-fat is not about calorie restriction, duh. And then I said, well, it's the reason that most low-carb diets tend to work though. However, I think that restricting carbs is unnecessary for most people. And then Jimmy says, not sure what you think is relevant given you don't know how a low-carb high-fat works. On a high-carb low-fat diet, I gain more weight at more than 1800 calories a day. On a low-carb high-fat diet, I can eat 2800 calories a day without gaining weight. And I just said to him, I wish you the best in your health. Weight loss is great, but if it comes at the expense of long-term health, then it is a concern. Please consider that you may be increasing your risk of colon cancer through the consumption of a high-fat, high-meat diet. And he asked based on what? So I linked him 3 different studies showing that colon cancer is linked to meat intake. And there was another comment by Alexandre who said, if you really were a naturally fat person like me, you would know that real weight loss restriction. If not, it's malnutrition, and in the end you've got problems. I lost 22 metric kilograms. I know some tricks about diet. Then she linked someone else who was on the thread, The Vegetarian Myth by Leah Keith. I have heard of it and I don't agree with that book. Alexandra C then says, why do Argentinian people have very low rectal cancer and eat tons of red meat? And then Clyde answered Jimmy and said, well, can you find a single study where full-grown adults on low-carb, high-fat actually eat 2000 calories a day or more? I'm sure you're an honest person, but studies are more reliable than personal accounts. Then I replied to Alexandra and said, I had a look at the 2 studies you linked above. In those studies, they are comparing a low-carb diet to a conventional low-fat diet. However, the conventional low-fat diet still had over 10% of calories coming from fat, even up to 30% from fat. This is not what I advise anyone to eat. This conventional low-fat diet that these studies use is not truly a low-fat plant-based diet. It is studies like that which cloud judgment, and this is the reason why so many people in the low-carb crew are misinformed about low-carb versus low-fat diets. There has not yet been a study to my knowledge that compares a truly low-fat, under 10% of calories, plant-based diet to a ketogenic or a low-carb diet. I agree that low-carb may be good for weight loss, but it is not a long-term solution. Low-fat, as recommended in the Kaiser Permanent Journal, is the best way to reverse disease and treat obesity. It is a diet, even lifestyle, that people can do long-term without intentional calorie restriction due to the satiety of whole plant foods and de novo lipogenesis being the pathway of last resort for fat gain. A whole foods plant-based diet low in fat, where people do not restrict their calorie or carbohydrate intake, also avoids the danger of metabolic damage. There are several reasons why people may gain weight from following a plant-based high-carb, low-fat diet. I have covered these issues in previous videos, but the main reason is due to past calorie restriction or restriction of carbs. My Sugar Myths 2 video goes into the science of why carbs do not necessarily make people fat. Then People Suck said, again, you have no clue what you're talking about. De novo lipogenesis is a pathway of last resort for fat gain. Do you even know what that means? And then she, or he, goes into this explanation of how de novo lipogenesis works. Then they insult me about how I don't know anything about biology or physiology or anatomy or anything beyond a basic level of science. I just replied and said, People Sucks, the key word you brought up was excess. Further on in the thread, People Sucks linked 2 different studies.